fucking way. Check that shit again.
That's the one, Tommy.
I need to borrow your car.
In the drug game in Chicago, Episode 9 became a theater of survival, ambition, and treachery. The world that characters like Vic, Nunez, the Garcias, and the rest of the characters are in is one where the line between loyalty and betrayal is very fragile as a tightrope, and shifting alliances can be the difference between life and death. Season 2 Episode 9 is a dark episode which explores betrayal, shifting alliances, and how the shadow of snitching can have dire consequences. While breaking down Episode 9, I do think it's important to explore the motivations and consequences behind the choices of these characters, diving deep into the moral and ethical dilemmas that confront not only characters like Vic and Nunez, but also Stacey Marks within law enforcement. The street game has its own code, and so does the law, but there are characters who are willing to toe the fine line of ethical and moral boundaries, so understanding betrayal, survival, shifting alliances, and snitching will be the central theme for this particular video as we break down the high-stakes events of Season 2, Episode 9. Now, this episode kicks off with Tommy and Diamond burying Mr. Reeves, where hopefully nobody will be able to find his body. But with him being a parole officer, Diamond did warn that they would be looking for him, although they did have more pressing matters at hand. Tommy made him aware that Jenny Sue thinks there's a snitch within the CBI, and where Tommy thought it was Jannard, Diamond thought it could be Vic. Both of them made their cases for why it could be Jannard or Vic, and they did make some good points to back both, but the only way they were going to find out was by putting them to a test. As Diamond tried to get back to normal, Jannard came to see how his brother was, because nobody knew him better than his younger brother. He knew that he had a close bond with Leon, and just how much it was hurting his older brother, and Diamond was more than just his boxing coach, he was a mentor and a father figure. He tried to do right by Leon, and I do feel like Jannard was genuinely trying to be there for him. Diamond was there for his younger brother during arguably the darkest moment of his life, and he was trying to repay the favor, and there was one way he could help Diamond, it was by finding Leon's killer. With the Garcias, we saw Abuela come to see Miguel, which is where we learned about his next move. He was going to try and sniff Diamond out to see if there was a way to separate him from Tommy and merge his operation with the CBI, and that way Shay would have no choice but to make him the sole distributor, divide and conquer, and Miguel's grandmother liked the sound of it, but that's not all. He also said he was going to kill Tommy, which sent Maria in a whirlwind of emotion, because she was caught in between her family and her love for Tommy. Now, it was also here where they dropped a hint about Abuela saying she needed to borrow Miguel's car because hers was at the shop, which is crucial to what we saw play out later on. In Episode 9, we were also introduced to one of Shay's rivals, the Marquez cartel. Merkovich was having a meeting with Roberto Ortega in Elise's club, who I believe is the leader of the Marquez cartel, but Claudia is an opportunist. She saw this as an opportunity to introduce herself and move above Merkovich. Now, this also goes back to the theme of shifting alliances, so let's not forget about what Claudia's end goal is when it comes to the Serbs.
Let's use them just like they'd use us.
It's gonna take all I got to not turn the lights off on those motherfuckers.
Keep that energy. The Serbs always have an angle.
Use them until they don't need them anymore, so I do think it's important for us to keep that in mind as Claudia continues to make her moves. Now, Merkovich wasn't happy, and he said that it was up to her to come up with the money for the two buy-ins, which we'll come to in just a moment. With law enforcement, Stacey Marks got the authorization she wanted to arrest Egan. That was after Vic admitted that he saw Tommy kill Vargas, although we do need to remember, she didn't exactly give Vic a choice, and that was the issue between her and Bobby DeFranco. It's also where the topic of ethics does come into play. Stacey Marks was willing to do anything to bring down Tommy and the Estrada cartel, but Bobby DeFranco, he's different, he's by the book, and despite Stacey being his wife, he warned her, if she were to pull Egan in, then he would make himself available to the defense counsel, and he wasn't joking. He wanted Stacey Marks to find another way, which she did. Despite her having a warrant to arrest Tommy, she told the task force that she wanted to cross every T and dot every I, and so their next task was to bug Tommy's apartment. Now, what have we learned about Tommy since he's come to Chicago? He's a seasoned criminal who constantly has his head on a swivel, and so after the tracking device they found in Vic's car, it seems like Tommy's made arrangements to put high-tech level of CCTV all around his apartment. He had every single angle covered, and now his apartment was like a fortress. They couldn't even hack into it because his security cameras and system was completely off the grid, so to get their bug in, their best bet was Vic Flynn. When Vic was pulled in, of course, he was unhappy with the idea because he knew Tommy was moving a little different, and Vic was worried. He really was worried of what Tommy would do to him, but we all know Stacey Marks, she wanted to catch Tommy in action with money, product, and making a deal with the Estrada cartel. They wanted him dead to rights, but Vic knew this could cost him his life. Unfortunately, he had no choice. This brings me back over to the coalition and Tommy sniffing out who the CI was within his organization. Tommy was putting the wheels in motion to find out who the snitch was. He was rotating everybody's phones because Jenny Sue had contacts at the phone company who could find out which phone had been red flagged, which would point them right to the snitch, which Tommy believed was Jannard. But looking on was a very worried Vic Flynn because he knew that Tommy was becoming suspicious. Now, after Maria heard what Miguel's intentions were, she came straight to see Tommy. However, the first topic that she brought up was Lakeisha Grant.
Now, Cash, if I give this ring to your mother, that means the three of us is gonna be family. You all right with that?
Yeah.
When Maria brought up Lakeisha, you could tell Tommy was still visibly upset, and her death still haunts him till this very day. When he came to Chicago, he was still reminiscing about Lakeisha and Cash, and the love that he had for them was real. He went to visit Cash in Go Season 1, and a while back, Jose Sikora also replied to a post about who he loved the most in Power, and he said it himself, so far, Lakeisha. But this is why Maria really appreciates Tommy. He's the only one who treats her with respect, and so in this moment she made a choice. Subconsciously, she always knew at some point she would have to pick between her brother and Tommy. She also told him about Miguel's plan to kill him, and how she was on his side, not her brother's. Now, the threat to one's life also extended to Diamond after he paid a visit to Gianna. Jamal told him that he may as well say his final goodbyes, but boy was he talking to the wrong person. I think what fueled him even further to get rid of Jamal wasn't just the fact that he made a threat, he was also the one who ratted him out to Mr. Reeves. Officers always leave a log around their whereabouts, and according to Mr. Reeves' paperwork, he was heading over to Diamond's barbershop. Now, he gave her a story of how he came because he thought he was dealing drugs, and when he didn't find anything, he left. And Jannard stuck with that same story, but Jamal was still a loose end that needed to be taken care of for more reasons than one. Not only did he snitch on Diamond, but also because of his treatment of Leon, and we were always going to see a different side to Diamond after what happened to Leon in episode 8, and so this was a reminder that the old Diamond is back. Now, sticking with Diamond, he was summoned by Miguel Garcia, where he was trying to find out where his loyalties lie, and I do wonder what Diamond was thinking when Miguel Garcia asked him about Tommy, and I'll get to that later on. But unfortunately, this is where tragedy struck. Nunez had brought back Miguel's car but had planted a bomb inside, which would have been triggered the moment Miguel started the ignition. Now, I do say Miguel because I do think it's an important point to make. The assassination attempt was for Miguel Garcia, not his grandma, but one thing's for sure, all hell was about to break loose, because the love that Miguel Garcia has for his family is huge. Family is everything to him, and Abuela was more than just his grandmother. She raised him, she was there for him, and she was also a mentor and very much the brains behind the operation. So now that he's lost his grandmother, although this will unleash his wrath, I do think he's going to be a little vulnerable and weak, which is a point that Nunez raised. Abuela was very streetwise, she was right about Tommy, she was right about the moves he was making, and she was certainly right about Nunez's loyalty.
If he feels left out, he will not be loyal to you.
He was the one who was making the deal with Merkovich to kill Miguel, which goes back to one of the themes of this video, betrayal and snitching. Now, on the topic of betrayal, intertwined in episode 9 was the story with the Marquez cartel. Shanti wasn't mad that Claudia had met with Roberto Ortega. In fact, she was actually impressed with the move that she made, and she had another proposition for Shanti: leave the CBI and move powder and pills for her with the Marquez cartel. But the catch was, they had to pay for the first 2 buy-ins up front, which is where Elise came in. She wasn't fazed by Shanti one bit, and she said she'll get the money, which she did, and both Claudia and Shanti were kind of impressed. However, I still do believe Elise is punching way above her weight, because she's not a bit like Claudia and Shanti, who knows the game, how it works, and the consequences that are attached to it. So I do feel Elise could find herself in trouble at some stage, especially with her being a thumbscrew of Claudia's. Now, with this deal being in place, Shanti opened up to Jannard where they spoke about their alliance with the CBI. Jannard told Shanti that maybe their endgame only has to end in the death of Tommy, not Diamond, which does go back to the relationship and bond that the brothers have started to build again, especially after the death of their father. So I do get the feeling that Jannard isn't fully on board with Shanti's vision. He definitely wants his seat at the table, no doubt, because he said it again earlier this season. He ran the CBI for 15 years, so he is on board, but not with killing Diamond. Now, Shanti also made him aware of the deal that Claudia put in place with the Marquez cartel, and we all know about the chess game Shanti's been playing. Despite her move with Claudia, she still believed that taking the CBI was their best bet, and maybe the next move to make would be to make sure Claudia doesn't finish the race. So with that being said, Shanti tells Tommy about Claudia's move with the Marquez cartel. Tommy stood back and listened to Shanti because he doesn't fully trust her, and just have a look at Tommy. You question Diamond later around whether she can be trusted, and Diamond said that she's a boxer, she moves around and she's hard to predict. So this is where Tommy began to put counter move into motion. Tommy tells her to move over to Claudia's organization. Even though losing Garfield Park would hurt, he was willing to take that hit. Now on Abuela's funeral, Tommy and Diamond were here to give their condolences, but he quickly switched over to business with Shay, which wasn't appreciated either by Miguel Garcia, Diamond or Shay, because it just wasn't the right place or time. Although having a look at the other perspective, I do kind of have to agree with Tommy, sometimes business can't wait. Especially as Tommy made Shay aware that Merkovich was making a play with the Marquez cartel, and they had to make a move quick. So Shay appreciated the information, but also shut him down, which made Tommy move to plan B. Tommy knew Shay gave the go-ahead to Miguel to kill Merkovich, but Tommy wanted to mess that up for him, then swoop in and show Shay that they could do what he couldn't. Now that plan started by finding out who planted the bomb in the car, which he knew would have been an inside job, and Tommy found out through Maria that Nunez had brought back Miguel's car, and so he knew who the snitch was. Now Tommy brought in Vic to help him deal with Nunez, which is where he planted the bug in Tommy's apartment. Now at this moment in time, Tommy didn't know Vic was a snitch, which stays very true to his character. Sometimes he is trusting in the wrong people, but he did warn him he hates the snitch kind, and there wasn't any punishment sadistic enough for them. Although at this moment in time, he didn't know Vic was a CI. Now they grabbed Nunez from outside Merkovich's restaurant, and we saw the Tommy that we're all used to seeing. This is someone who enjoys torturing people that mess with him, his family, or his organization. And it is quite sick and twisted, but it is who Tommy Egan is. He's a character who has a lot of layers. He can show a loving side with those that mean the world to him like Maria, but for those who cross him or are snitches, oh I would hate to be in their shoes. Now this was also another cool little Easter egg and a nod to Julio again. He said that he liked the look of this tattoo, and maybe he should cut it off like they did to his boy. This was in reference to the time Julio was killed, and had his tattoo torn, which was orchestrated by Dre, Cristobal and the Toros Locos gang. The tattoo was a symbol of their affiliation, similar to the Insane Prince's tattoo that we've seen from a few of Miguel's crew. But as Tommy began to slice into it, Nunez spilled the beans on Miguel's plan to attack the Serbs, which Tommy didn't want. We all knew Tommy wanted to mess up the hit so he could swoop in and do what Miguel couldn't, so he forced Nunez to make the call to Merkovich to warn him, but time was of the essence because Miguel's crew were just about to pull up on the Serbian network. This is where we saw Miguel Garcia and the Serbian network engage in a hell of a gunfight at their restaurant. There was a few bodies that dropped on both sides, but Merkovich and a few of his soldiers did survive another day. Now as this hit on Merkovich didn't go to plan, he was getting one hell of a grilling from Shay, because the Serbs were working with the Marquez cartel, and so this botched hit did start risking a cartel war, which they couldn't afford. But this little meeting was interrupted by Tommy, who brought in Nunez, who was a snitch that planted a bomb in Miguel's car, and again, Shay was not impressed with Miguel Garcia. He questioned how did Tommy know that he had a rat in his organization, and he didn't. Now the thing is, Miguel did know. Abuela told him in episode 8 that he needed to keep an eye on Nunez because he wasn't happy that Nazi was promoted before he was. So if he didn't feel valued, then he would betray him, which is exactly what happened. He didn't listen to his grandmother and she paid the price. Now just before we move on, what this also does is make Tommy look good in front of Shay. He was able to do something Miguel couldn't, and it only puts more respect on his name. Just like Shay said earlier, he respects his hustle. Now on the topic of family, elsewhere we had the family dynamic between JP, Kate and D-Mac, as JP received a call from Michelle Jones from Great Shores Youth Academy, who told him that D-Mac had gone missing. This was the first time we heard JP's full name. JP stands for John Patrick, and many of you guys will remember I did raise a point about how there could be more story when it came to Ghost. There's JSP, James St. Patrick, JP Gibbs, John Patrick, and Tommy's middle name also happens to be Patrick, Thomas Patrick Egan. So is it a coincidence? You guys know I don't believe in such things in power, so it may just be something to keep an eye on. With D-Mac, he was hiding at our Marshalls, and when JP came through they were engaged in one heated argument. Even though it was Tommy's idea to send him to a youth academy, D-Mac told him he was his father, and he wanted him to fight harder for him. This also put his relationship into perspective with Kate, and where they shared similarities between their situations. JP didn't try hard enough to find D-Mac, and Kate also left JP when he was young, and so they shared a warm embrace as they put aside their differences. Now on the topic of love and family, Tommy and Maria's relationship was hitting new heights in episode 9. He gave her the security codes to his place, which I don't know if it was such a good idea. We all know Maria is on Tommy's side, but who knows whether these codes could fall into the wrong hands. For example, Miguel Garcia. Towards the end of the evening, as he came back to Maria, we also saw another cool little Easter egg and a callback to Power. Angela and Ghost always had dreams of living a different life out in Miami, which was just a fantasy, and I am glad that Tommy used that exact same word. Maria's fantasy was Barcelona, so very similar to Ghost and Angela, They have their very own little destination, which again, will only ever be a fantasy. Now there are two huge moments I do think we need to finish on. A potential conflict that may start to brew between Tommy and Diamond, and Tommy finding out Vic is a snitch. On Tommy and Diamond, this situation we had Junod, we began to plant the seeds that Tommy had been making solo moves and they didn't need him. And I do wonder what Diamond was thinking when Miguel Garcia asked him whether he wanted to join with the Insane Princes. At some stage, it does make sense if Tommy and Diamond do come into conflict through differing opinions on how to run their organization, what moves to make, and who knows, it could very well start with King Kilo's nephew. If Diamond really does want to avenge Leon's killer, then killing King Kilo's nephew will put their entire coalition in danger, and that really would jeopardize the relationship between Tommy and Diamond. So that's just a thought. I do think they're leaving the breadcrumbs for a potential conflict between Tommy and Diamond. Now, as the night was coming to a close, we had Tommy meeting with Jenny Sue, who had a contact at the phone company looking to the burner phones. Tommy rightfully questioned Shanti's burner, because he does feel something is off when it comes to Shanti, but he was shocked at the number that was red flagged. It was Vic Flynn. And now you have to think, the walls are really closing on Vic, or are they? Could there be a twist to the tale, or is Vic Flynn's fate sealed? I personally think there is a twist in store, but drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.